I don't remember parking the car. I don't remember grabbing my bag or even shutting the door behind me, but I remember the air, how thick it felt, like breathing through a soaked cloth. I was standing outside a grocery store on a warm Thursday afternoon. People were walking past, carts clattering over the sidewalk, birds chirping, a child laughing somewhere. Life moved on, but I didn't. Something inside me snapped, quietly, invisibly, but with the force of a bomb. My vision blurred, like someone had turned the sharpness dial all the way down. My legs felt like rubber. I reached for my phone but couldn't feel. My fingers, my heart. It wasn't beating. It was hammering, like a warning, like a countdown. I tried to take a deep breath. Failed. Tried again. Failed. My chest locked up. My throat clenched. I remember thinking, this is it. I'm dying. I looked around for help, for a face that might notice something was wrong. No one did. They just kept walking. A man brushed past me, annoyed that I was standing still. A woman pushing a stroller smiled at me, not realizing I was about to collapse. I was disappearing in public, and no one saw it happening. And I couldn't speak. I couldn't scream. I was trapped inside my own body, inside my own fear. I crouched down by the curb, holding my chest. Still no words, still no help. That's when I thought, I'm having a heart attack. The sirens never came. No one called them, because I didn't collapse physically. I collapsed internally. After what felt like forever, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15, the worst of it passed. My heartbeat slowed. I could breathe again, just barely. I sat there on the pavement, sweat soaking my shirt, staring at the ground like I'd just survived something no one else could see. Later that night, lying on my bedroom floor, still afraid. To fall asleep, I opened my laptop and typed into Google, "How do you know if you had a panic attack?" That search changed everything, because it wasn't a heart attack, it wasn't low blood sugar, it wasn't dehydration. It was anxiety. And that day it broke me, right there in the middle of a public sidewalk, and no one saw it happen before. All of this, I was the person people came to for advice. I was calm, logical, dependable, the one who could fix things, organize chaos, hold everything and everyone together. I worked as a project manager in a mid-size marketing firm. Deadlines, client calls, high-pressure campaigns, they didn't faze me. I thrived on the rush. I was always in control. At least, I thought I was. My days were packed. Mornings began with emails, back-to-back meetings by noon, late nights finishing reports with coffee by my side. Evenings were quick dinners, half-watched Netflix shows, and collapsing into bed, mentally rehearsing the next day before I even closed my eyes. Weekends weren't much different. I rarely said no to work, or to people. If a friend needed help moving, I was there. If a family member needed a ride to the airport at 4 a.m., I didn't hesitate. I wore my busyness like a badge of honor. I believed that as long as I was productive, I was okay. People saw me as high-functioning. But what they didn't see was the weight I carried underneath all that function. I ignored the headaches. I explained away the random chest tightness. I laughed about the nights I couldn't fall asleep until 4 a.m. I just have a lot on my plate, I'd say. It'll pass. My relationships were fine, but distant. I was always too tired, too distracted, too wrapped up in work to notice that I was slowly disappearing from the lives around me. My partner started pointing it out. "You're here, but you're not really here." I brushed it off. "You don't understand how stressful this job is." In truth, I couldn't slow down, because slowing down meant facing something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't okay, but I had no language for it, no diagnosis, no name. Just this constant low hum of unease under everything. There were signs, so many signs, moments I dismissed as just being tired, like the time I got dizzy in the middle of a presentation, or when I couldn't catch my breath during a grocery run, or when I started avoiding phone calls because the idea of answering them made my stomach turn. Looking back now, it wasn't. Sudden. Anxiety didn't crash into my life overnight. It crept in slowly, like a leak in the roof you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. But back then, I didn't see it. Didn't want to, because seeing it meant I'd have to change. And I wasn't ready for that, so I kept going. And anxiety kept growing, just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment I'd finally break. The unraveling didn't start with a panic attack. It started with little things, things that seemed too small to matter. I stopped sleeping through the night. At first, I blamed caffeine, blue light, late emails. But even after cutting all of that, I'd lie awake at 2 a.m., wide-eyed, my thoughts racing like a broken carousel. I started forgetting simple things, people's names, words, mid-sentence, why I walked into a room. My chest felt tight during meetings, my jaw clenched constantly. And still I told myself, it's just stress. Mornings became the hardest part. I'd wake up already exhausted. My heart would be pounding before my feet even hit the floor. But I kept going, because that's what I was taught to do. Smile, show up, push through. I remember sitting in traffic one morning and gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my fingers went numb. Not from road rage, from fear. Fear of the day. Fear of people. Fear of making a mistake, of breaking down in front of someone. But again, I told myself, you're just overreacting. I began to avoid certain conversations, anything that might make me seem weak. If someone asked how I was doing, I had my automatic reply ready. I'm good. Busy, but good. I wasn't good. I was unraveling. My inbox started to feel like a personal attack. My phone buzzing gave me a mini adrenaline spike. I avoided reading messages just so I wouldn't have to respond. I'd sit in meetings and zone out, not from boredom, but because my mind was so loud I couldn't hear anyone else. It was like my brain was constantly rehearsing disaster. What if I mess up? What if they notice something's wrong? What if I faint? What if I really lose it? I stopped taking breaks. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped trusting my own body, and no one knew. Because on the outside I looked normal. I looked fine. I made jokes at lunch, hit every deadline, kept my calendar full. But the truth, I was holding on by threads. I remember one night I was brushing my teeth when my hands suddenly started shaking. No reason, no warning, just tremors I couldn't control. I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, "What is happening?" To me, still I didn't ask for help, because part of me still believed it would go away, that I was being dramatic, that it was all in my head. The world doesn't always make space for invisible pain, especially when you're still functioning. That was the scariest part. Not that I was falling apart, but that I was falling apart in silence, and no one could hear it but me. It happened in a place I'd been to 100 times before. Familiar, harmless. A cafe just down the street from my office. I was meeting a client. Nothing out of the ordinary. Small talk, coffee, a pitch deck pulled up on my laptop. But as they were talking, I realized I hadn't heard a single word. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest. It felt like thunder trapped inside my ribs. My vision narrowed. The light above our table became too bright, too loud somehow. The chatter in the background turned into a roar. I couldn't focus, couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking, my mouth went dry, and my only thought was, something is seriously wrong. I stood up mid-sentence, excused myself, rushed to the restroom, heart racing like I'd run a marathon. But I hadn't even made it halfway there when my legs gave out. Not completely, just enough to make me grab the wall. I remember clutching the corner, trying to steady myself, my breath coming in sharp gasps. A waiter passed by and glanced at me, concerned. "Are you all right?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Just low blood sugar," I lied. But it wasn't low blood sugar. It wasn't dehydration. And deep down, I knew it. I made it into the bathroom and locked the door. Sat, on the closed toilet lid and held my chest with both hands. It felt like a heart attack, a real one. I was dizzy, drenched in sweat, hyper-aware of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. No pain, just fear. Fear so massive it swallowed me whole. I texted my partner. I think something's wrong. I can't breathe. They called. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared at the phone vibrating in my hand, hoping it would all just stop. After maybe 15 minutes, the symptoms began to fade, not disappear, just loosen their grip. Enough for me to stand, to wash my face, to fake a smile and walk back into that cafe like nothing happened. My client said nothing. Maybe they noticed, maybe they didn't. I wrapped up the meeting, told them I wasn't feeling well, blamed it on food poisoning, and left. I sat in my car afterward for nearly an hour, just breathing, or trying to, terrified that it would happen again. That night I Googled everything I could think of. Heart attack symptoms under 30, random dizzy spells. Why do I feel like I'm dying but I'm not? And then I saw it. One article, one word, panic attack. I remember clicking on it with trembling fingers, reading symptom after symptom. Every single one matched. It was like someone had written about me. My body, my breakdown. But I still wasn't ready to believe it, because the world tells you anxiety is just worry, something you can snap out of, something only fragile people experience. But I didn't feel fragile. I felt broken, and even worse, I felt alone, because no one talks about this. Not when you're young, not when you're successful, not when you're the person everyone else leans on. That day at the cafe, I didn't just have a panic attack. I lost my trust in my own body, and nothing felt safe after that. I cancelled every plan. After that day in the cafe, life didn't go back to normal. In fact, normal became a distant memory. Every plan on my calendar started to feel like a trap. Dinner with friends? What if it happened again? A family event? What if I couldn't escape? So I cancelled. One by one. Every commitment, every outing became something I dreaded. The risk of losing control in front of people, it was too much. So I disappeared. Slowly. Quietly, not dramatically, just faded. Google became my therapist. I spent hours searching for answers. Chest pain, anxiety versus heart attack. Best way to calm down fast. Symptoms of brain tumor. Can you faint from panic? I convinced myself I was dying of something. Anything. I checked my pulse constantly. I had tabs open with every WebMD article, Reddit thread, and medical blog imaginable. But all it did was make it worse. Because every answer pointed in one direction. You're not physically sick, you're afraid. And I hated that answer. Even breathing felt like a risk. My own breath became suspicious. Was I breathing too fast? Too shallow? Was that tightness in my chest or my imagination? Every flicker of sensation felt like a signal. Danger is coming. I became hyper-aware of everything. Heartbeat, fingers tingling, the slightest dizziness. Everything meant something. Everything meant panic. So I stopped trusting my body altogether. No one knew what was happening. To the outside world, I looked fine. I still worked, still replied to emails, still said I'm good when people asked, but no one knew I was barely functioning, that I was having silent meltdowns in locked bathrooms, that I cried in my car between errands, that sometimes I sat in bed fully dressed for hours because the idea of going outside felt impossible. Shame became my shadow. I was ashamed, deeply. Ashamed that I couldn't handle life. Ashamed that I was scared of things that never scared me before. Ashamed that I couldn't explain any of it in words that sounded rational. People asked, "What are you so afraid of?" And I had no answer, because the fear didn't have a face. It just lived in my chest, in my stomach, in my thoughts, all the time. I disappeared without leaving. I didn't run away. I didn't move to a new place. I was still there, in every room, every call, every family dinner, but I was gone. The version of me they all knew, that person had started to disappear, and no one seemed to notice. At some point, I wasn't living anymore. I was just dodging triggers, managing symptoms, pretending to function. I was surviving, but not living. It wasn't one big moment that made me ask for help. It was 1,000 tiny ones stacked on top of each other, like the time I skipped a friend's birthday because I couldn't leave the house. Or the day I forgot how to speak during a Zoom meeting, literally opened my mouth and nothing came out. Or the night I sat on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., shaking, telling myself, I can't keep living like this. It wasn't the panic itself that broke me. It was the exhaustion, the constant pretending, the endless loop of fear, shame, silence, repeat. One afternoon I was scrolling through Instagram, numb as usual, when I saw a post. Just a simple quote. You're not weak for needing help. You're strong for asking. I don't know why it hit me that day. Maybe because I'd run out of reasons not to. Maybe because I was tired of being afraid of myself. So I opened a new tab and searched therapists near me. Even that felt terrifying. What if they didn't believe me? What if I couldn't explain what was wrong? What if they told me it was all in my head? But I made the call. My voice trembled. I cried while booking the appointment, not because I was sad, but because I felt, for the first time in forever, relief. The first session was awkward. I didn't know where to begin. But the therapist did. She asked me questions I'd never thought to ask myself. She didn't flinch when I told her about the panic. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. And when I finally stopped talking, she said, what you're describing sounds like generalized anxiety disorder. And what you're feeling is valid. Valid. That word landed like a gift. It wasn't fake. It wasn't weakness. It was real. And suddenly I wasn't just a person who couldn't handle life. I was a person going through something difficult, with a name and a path forward. We talked about options, therapy, breathing techniques, journaling. Eventually, she suggested I talk to a doctor about medication. I was hesitant, but I was also desperate. And slowly, things started to shift, not dramatically, not overnight, but enough to breathe again, enough to imagine that maybe one day I wouldn't feel this way forever. Asking for help didn't fix me. It just gave me permission to stop pretending I was fine. And that was the first real step toward healing. I thought that once I started therapy, things would magically get better, like a straight road out of the storm. But healing, I learned, doesn't move in straight lines. Some days, I felt like I could breathe again. Other days, the weight on my chest came back like it never left. The first time I laughed, really laughed, I cried afterward. Not from joy, but from fear that the peace would disappear again. And sometimes it did. There were setbacks, like the morning I woke up in a cold sweat, convinced I was dying again, or the time I sat frozen in my car outside the grocery store, unable to walk in. But this time, I had tools. Therapy gave me language. I learned what grounding was. I learned to recognize when I was spiraling. I learned how to ride the wave instead of fighting it. CBT helped me untangle thoughts that had felt like facts. Just because I thought something didn't mean it was true. That simple shift changed everything. I started journaling daily, not poetic, not perfect, just honest. I'm scared today. I felt better for a while. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I kept going anyway. Medication helped too. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, steadying way. It gave me a baseline, a space to do the work without drowning in fear every morning. Some people around me didn't understand. They thought anxiety was something I could control, that if I just exercised more or thought more positively, I'd be fine. But others, bless them, showed up without asking for an explanation. A friend who sat with me in silence, a coworker who covered for me without making me feel guilty. My partner, who kept saying, "You don't have to fix it all at once, just come back to me." I created small rituals, morning stretches, evening walks without my phone, 5 deep breaths before opening emails, tiny things that anchored me. In the present, progress was slow, frustrating, beautiful. There were relapses, yes, but each time I came back a little faster. Each time I panicked a little less about the panic itself, and eventually I stopped asking, "When will I be cured?" and started asking, "How can I live with this?" kindly. That shift was everything. Healing didn't make me perfect. It made me honest. It made me softer. It made me real. I still get anxious, but I'm no longer scared of it, and that changes everything. If I could go back and talk to the version of me who first felt their chest tighten in the middle of the night, the version who thought they were dying in that cafe bathroom, the one who Googled, "Am I going crazy?" at 3 a.m. while crying silently so no one else would hear, I'd sit beside them. I wouldn't say, "It's going to be okay." I'd say, "You're not broken. And no, you're not crazy." I'd tell them that anxiety isn't a character flaw. It isn't a weakness. It's a response, a signal, a scream your body whispers when your mind stops listening. And I'd tell them it's not their fault. Because for years I thought it was. I thought if I were stronger, smarter, tougher, I could beat it. But anxiety isn't something you beat. It's something you learn to carry, with care, not shame. There's a quiet kind of courage in facing what no one else can see. It doesn't get applause. No one throws you a parade for surviving the morning commute when you wanted to disappear. No one celebrates the day you finally ask for help, but those moments, those are the victories that rebuild you. I used to measure my worth by how much I could do, how many boxes I could check, how much I could hold without falling apart. Now, I measure my growth in breaths, in honest conversations, in mornings where I wake up and think, "Okay, I can try again." I've learned that healing isn't loud. It's quiet. It's in choosing to stay when your instinct is to run. It's in texting a friend, "I'm not okay," instead of lying. It's in saying no to a plan because your body needs rest, not excuses. I've also learned to forgive myself for the breakdowns, for the cancelled plans, for the times I couldn't show up how I wanted to, because this version of me, the one who's still standing, still showing up, still soft, still real, still trying, they deserve love too. Anxiety didn't ruin my life, it reshaped it. And in some ways it brought me back to myself. I don't have all the answers, but I have a voice again. I have hope. And I have the proof that even in the darkest, loneliest places, there's still a way forward. If you're somewhere in that darkness now, I see you, and I promise it won't always feel this way. If you're still here, listening, watching, thank you. Not just for making it to the end of my story, but for holding space for someone else's pain, even as you carry your own. Maybe this sounds familiar. Maybe you've sat in your car afraid to walk into the store. Maybe you've smiled in group photos while silently falling apart. Maybe you've convinced yourself no one would understand. But hear me now. You are not alone. You are not broken. And you do not have to keep pretending you're fine. You don't need to have a diagnosis to deserve support. You don't need to be at rock bottom to ask for help. You don't need to explain everything perfectly for it to be real. Your anxiety is not a weakness. It's part of your story. And that story, your story, deserves to be heard. So if you're watching this and thinking, "That's me," please know. There's nothing wrong with needing help. There's nothing wrong with feeling too much. There's nothing wrong with you. If this story meant something to you, share it. Not just online, but with someone you trust. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment. Tell your story. You never know who needs to hear it. And if today all you did was survive, that's enough. You're enough.